my frequency has changed so much. It's like, I have some people in my life, but they're way, way in the background. They're like silhouettes. Like we are not interacting anymore. And I don't even think that they would have the nerve to say that to me. My gifts really started developing. I started, getting past these layers of embarrassment to talk about what I was experiencing. And I just started talking about it to my children, to my friends. And those are a lot of the friends that disappeared. And my daughters and their partners have been so extraordinarily accepting of my transformation. And it's enriched our relationships so much.
Love that.
Because they have watched me try to fit in to so many different spaces.
Yeah.
And they see my joy now. They see me living in my authentic joy. They see what's happening in my life, what I'm attracting.
Yes.
The abundance.
Yes.
They see how healthy I am. And, I'm doing things that no one in my lineage has done.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. There's nothing more fascinating to me about this earth than the people who inhabit it. My mission is to create deep, vulnerable, and open conversations that invite our unique guests to share the arc of their ever-evolving journey through life, in the hope that their stories inspire and resonate with you, our listeners. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. I am so excited to be here with our guest this week, Ricci King, the amazing Ricci King. Ricci is someone I've been working with for the last several years. And she is now an astrologer herself in her own right. She is brilliant. I have learned so much from Ricci. She just brings a wealth of knowledge in terms of life experience. And from that life experience, her perspective is unique and it's inspiring. And I'm really excited to introduce Ricci to our audience. Welcome, Ricci. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
For inviting me. Thank you for that beautiful intro. I'm blushing. I think I'm blushing. I feel like
Good. I'm glad. Happy to shine the light on you. You deserve to be in the spotlight here. So, please tell.
I was just going to say, who would have ever thought when you did my first reading that we would end up here years later?
I know, right? Yes. Well, when we started working together, I was so fascinated from your story from our first reading and inspired by you from day one, and was really honored that you chose to work with me weekly for, over a year or so. We did. And I'm just so proud of all that you are accomplishing right now in your own right as an astrologer, with all your clients and the groups that you're meeting with, and you're really, stirring something up and inspiring those that feel a draw to connect with you. So yes, so let's start at the beginning, Ricci. I mean, tell us who you are, where do you come from? What is your background? Because your story is amazing. I know you've been through a lot. You've been on an incredible journey, a journey that I can't imagine, except just to have empathy for you and everything that you've experienced in life. But to know your story and to see where you are now, and as you continue to thrive in this life, is truly a guidepost for me. So, yes.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so I came from a big family, and I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Pomona, California. I live in Seattle now. And I was the oldest of, or I am the oldest of 7 children.
Wow.
And, but my siblings are all half siblings. My mother had me when she was 19, and she was not married when she got pregnant with me. And she it's just such a wild story. But so she was dating this young man who was stationed near, she lived in Pomona, and she was dating this young man who ended up in jail, had got a dishonorable discharge from the military, ended up in jail. And while he was in jail, she got pregnant with me. And she wrote him and she let him know. And he said, not to worry, when I get out, I'll marry you, and you can put my name on her birth certificate. And, well, you'll be a respectable woman. Because, back in the day.
Yes.
So I was a bastard.
Oh, yes.
And, but here's the thing, I always knew he wasn't my father.
Yes. So that wasn't the story that you were told in
That
the
was not the
beginning.
story. No, his name is on my birth certificate.
Yeah. As far as you were told, he was your father.
He was my
But
father.
there was something within you that knew that, yeah, I don't fit in with the rest
I
of
always
this.
knew. I
Uh-huh.
always knew. He
What
got
was
out of
it? Yeah.
They got married. They had more children,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in and out of jail. They were drug addicts, my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and criminals. And, my mother had her children in very close succession after me.
Mm-hmm.
And, in retrospect, I think, she suffered from postpartum depression, and she self-medicated. And then she always felt better when she was pregnant, so she just
Mm-hmm.
kept getting pregnant. But
Mm-hmm.
then there are children to deal with, and
Yeah.
she just was not emotionally equipped to be a mother, or
Hmm.
mentally equipped to be a mother. And both of them, they were both abusive towards each other, towards their children. And as is the case with, a lot of drug addicts, the drugs came first
Mm.
before we ate or were clothed. They, you know, they needed their medicine.
Yes.
And so, and we grew up with a criminal element around us, all the time. And, we were exposed to a lot of things that young children shouldn't have to be exposed to, but,
Hmm.
were. I was very precocious. I was, really smart, and I loved school. School was
Mm-hmm.
kind of it was my happy place,
Hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's we'll talk about my chart later, but
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
like
yeah. No, we'll bring it
when
up
I
throughout. Yes.
when I see, when I became familiar with my chart, and I was like, oh
Yes.
yeah,
Well, it makes sense, right? Because of course you would like
totally,
school because your North Node, South Node axis is in Sagittarius and Gemini. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you're that higher learning, that expansion of your mind,
yeah,
I imagine you started in this really kind of small limiting space with your family dynamics and not learning anything of maybe consequential value from your parents. Like you longed for the wisdom and the bigger
yeah,
picture that you could
yeah,
receive at school. Is that
yes,
accurate?
yeah. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my teachers, I was a teacher's pet because I was
Mm.
that student that was like so hungry,
Mm.
so hungry, and so curious. Like I said,
Yes.
just the textbook precocious child, and with
Yes.
that Gemini South Node and, Gemini IC, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why,
Mm.
how,
Mm-hmm.
where,
Yes.
when?
Yes.
just like always asking, always asking questions, which teachers love and
Yeah.
parents, my parents were just like,
They got annoyed with you.
they were annoyed with me.
Yeah.
But I also, I had intuitive gifts at a
Mm-hmm.
very early age.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew things and I saw things and I heard things. And I would go to my parents and eventually to my grandparents because when I was young, really young, they lived in Illinois and then they moved back to Southern California. And I would, you go to your elders,
Mm-hmm.
to try to understand what you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like, shut it down.
Don't ask
Shut it down.
questions. Who's
Yeah, that's
saying this to you? Your parents or your grandparents or both?
everyone.
Everyone.
All the
And
all
and what were you asking about? That they just everything, or was it specifically, is he my father? When did that first come up?
that first came up when I was about, I'm going to say I was 3 or 4, and
Hmm.
he had gone back to jail, and I just straight up asked, like, is he my dad? He's not. I don't even think I asked. I think I flat out said he's not my dad.
When you were 3 or 4 years old, you had
Yeah.
that awakening.
Yes.
Wow, that
Yeah.
awareness. That's
Yes.
incredible. Yeah.
Yes. And
Do you remember what it was that made you say that, or why you were feeling that way?
I don't remember. I don't
Uh-huh.
remember. I can picture the home that we lived in, the neighborhood, the front yard, the backyard. I can picture all of that very clearly. I don't know the circumstances.
Hmm.
Um, that part I don't remember. But I also knew that I didn't belong there,
Hmm.
or either I didn't belong to them or I belonged to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about belonging for me.
Yes.
That's my,
Mm.
that's my Chiron.
Yes.
And it was, it's the 12th house Chiron. It was buried deep. But that came up my whole life. Like I knew, and every time I would bring it up, somebody would get out my birth certificate and be like, "Oh, here's his name right here on your birth
Yeah.
certificate."
So that means it's so.
So that makes it so.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, no, it doesn't fit. That's not, you know.
But that hunger for truth, and then it's like when you have these gifts, the truth, and
Hmm.
you're going to keep going after it, and until but then they would make me feel like I was crazy. I was being gaslit, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I was just like, what difference does it make? Really after a point, it was like, what difference does it make? He's never around anyway. He's in and out of prison, and but he still had a say in my life, as that he still wanted me to treat him like he had some authority over me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, you know, there were consequences for that.
What do you
There
mean?
were, there were consequences to me. Like he would beat the living daylights out of me.
Okay. Yeah. So
Because
you would try to push back, and then
well,
he would
I wouldn't try to push back. I would just push back.
you would push back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this is an important time to note that you are Aquarius rising. So,
Yeah.
as your ascendant in Aquarius, which is the rebellious sign, and you were
Yes.
born, you think about that precociousness or that curiosity. It's not just your Gemini South Node, it's also you were born with Mercury trine your ascendant. So the planet of consciousness and the mind is in close contact to the essence of your soul and personality. And then when you think of the authority or the father figure, Saturn is squaring your ascendant. So
Yeah.
that creates that even tenser rebellious nature to authority, and authority pushing back and really trying to restrict you in a way that could indicate a beating or
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that Saturn information has become so important to me. So funny because I just talked on Saturn earlier today, because Saturn co-rules my rising sign, you know.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so I have this hunger for reality. I have this, you know, and as Saturn in Pisces has been transiting through my first house, you know, I realize that like I love reality. Like I want to teach everyone to fall in love with reality. It's a gift, you know.
And what
And
does that
that's
mean to you?
to be in love
Reality.
with reality.
Yeah.
I think it's the basis for, it's the foundation for achievable dreams. When you start with reality as then you know where to go from there. People are, you know, we're taught to appropriate someone else's dreams and goals, especially as children, and especially I believe, as women, as females. And this has been like one of the list of gifts that astrology has brought to me is very, very long. But one of the gifts that's higher on the list is the reality of who I am.
Yes.
How I'm wired. This is my code. This is how I'm wired. This is the low-hanging fruit that I can reach to stabilize my nervous system. This is the low-hanging fruit that I can reach out to manifest. Like my chart is a treasure map. You know, that's how I teach with my clients.
Love that. Yeah.
And where is the treasure buried? That's the thing, because it's, I mean, the low hanging fruit is the low hanging fruit, but a lot of it's buried. And a lot of it's buried underneath the stories that I was taught to tell.
And what are those?
Well, that we were a close knit family, that I was taught that because I looked so different than my siblings, right? My
How
birth
so? What did they look like compared to you?
Well, they're all very tall, and I'm petite. And I mean, my facial features, everything. I just and you know, growing up in Southern California, I was always very brown, and you know, sun worshiper. It's one of my youth beauty tricks is living in the Pacific Northwest, where we don't get a lot of sun. Oh, now I lost my train of thought.
I was asking you what is it, you know, what were some of the physical different traits that you had?
Okay. So I was very short. My eye color, my hair color, like I had really dark hair. My siblings were all born blonde.
And yours was like dark brown?
Dark brown. Dark brown. My mannerisms, just who I was. I mean, I knew that I was different from the beginning. And as it turns out, my birth father, you know, through on that side, I'm indigenous to Central Mexico. Yes. But we were told, because my family knew these questions were going to come up, we were told that we were a quarter Chickasaw Indian, because that was the region where my grandmother and grandfather came from.
Where did they come from? Where they came from Mexico too,
Oklahoma.
or
they came from like,
Oklahoma? Yes,
Chickasaw
but your biological father came from Central Mexico.
Central Mexico, Chihuahua, Durango. That's where my ancestors are.
Yes.
So so many stories about our lineage were made up to accommodate my curiosity about why I looked so different.
Wow. Wow.
And to the point where even like Rick, who is my, the person on my birth certificate, who was born in, he has his own sad story. He was born in Seattle. So interesting that I ended up here. Those soul contracts.
Yes.
Um, and he was kidnapped by his father and taken to Southern California, he and his brothers. And he grew up in foster care and orphanages and had his own wounds, bless his heart. But he told the story because a lot of people thought I was Italian. Like I've always talked with my hands, since I was a child. My kindergarten teacher thought she was like, "Are you from New York?" And I'm like, "No, I was born here in Pomona." "No, I think you're from New York. Maybe you
Because your
another life."
mannerisms were like you're from Brooklyn or something. Is that Staten Island?
But now we know, we know in my chart where all that came from. So they invented all these stories. And so he invented the story that his family was Italian. Now we know all of it because he is the biological father of my sisters, my two half sisters. And one of my sisters had her DNA done, and she's 100% British.
Wow.
He has no indigenous nothing. And as it turns out, my great grandmother, who was my maternal great grandmother, my grandfather's mother, was born on Chickasaw land because white people were taking over, native land. But there's no Chickasaw Indian anywhere
in the bloodline.
In the bloodline.
Is your stepfather, is he the biological father of all your younger siblings?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he's the biological father of the next three, which would be my sister Randy, my sister Ronnie, and my brother Derek, because my brother Derek was the blonde version of him. They were like,
they look the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
My brother Sean, I believe, had a different father. And I'm certain that my brother Brooke had a different father. And then there was a brother that was put up for adoption when my father was or my stepfather, whatever, was in prison. And so my mother had 5 children then, and she put the 6th one up for adoption. And then my brother Sean was the 7th.
Wow. And so there's a lot of different dads in the mix here.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But so that was one of the stories that, the story that he was, and Rick is on all of the birth certificates. So the soul contract between he and my mother is one for the books.
Seriously, because I mean, if he's claiming to be the father of 7 kids, maybe only 4 of which are his, 3 or 4, maybe 3.
Probably.
So 4 of the 7 are not his kids. They're other men, but he's still claiming them as his own. So what was that relationship between him and your mom that he was...
The loyalty that they had towards each other right up until the end. When they split, finally, they still stayed best friends. And when he got out of prison the last time, he lived with her and her husband, common law husband. who was at one time his best friend. When they were at one point when they were married, and he the man that my mom ended up being married to, I babysat for their kids. I babysat for he and his wife. I babysat their children. Well, they would all go out, and they would leave all of the children with me. I was like 9 or 10.
So your mom ended up with another man other than Rick, who
Yes.
was Rick's best friend.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
And then Rick ended up living with them until he died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you, do you have their birth certificates, or are you going to order their birth certificates?
I know when they were born, but I don't have their birth certificates.
Are you going to order them so that you can do a deep dive into?
I am.
Because I'm fascinated to know like what their charts look like together, you know, because it's a very unique sort of relationship that they had. Obviously, it like went beyond.
They were like brother
norms.
and sister in the end. They were like brother and sister. He actually called her sis. He called her sis.
Wow.
But here's the thing, they all took this to the grave, that he wasn't my father.
Yeah. So how did that come to light?
I always knew.
Yes.
I always knew, right? Mm-hmm. And at one point I just stopped pursuing it because intuitively, I just know the truth will come to light. The truth comes to light. I believe that. I mean, that's very Sagittarian, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't get much more Sagittarian than that.
Exactly.
And I just stopped having the conversation with my family. So my sisters and I had been estranged for a very long period of time. And we reconnected several years ago. And I had mentioned to my sister, who's the next in line to me, that I was going to do my
ancestry.
My ancestry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, years before, my mother my mother hardly ever drank. She was a drug addict, but apparently she was drunk, which I can think of 2 times in my life I ever saw her buzzed on alcohol.
So she was using drugs.
She's usually using drugs, but this particular time she was drinking, and she got into an argument with my sister, my youngest sister, and she blurted out to my sister that Rick was not my father. And then she immediately, no, wait, I have this backward. Rick was high on heroin or methadone or whatever he was on. And he got into an argument with my sister, Ronnie, and he was really trying to hurt her feelings. And he blurted out to her that he wasn't my father. And she was maybe 15 at the time. And and that was during a time when I was saying, that man, I know he's not my father. Mm-hmm. And she just kept it to herself because, you know, in her mind, the grown-ups are supposed to take care of this. Mm-hmm. And so she didn't say anything. And then about 5 years later, the other situation happened where my mother was drinking, and she blurted out to my other sister that he wasn't my father. And so that sister called my youngest sister and said, hey, and then my youngest sister was like, yeah, I know. So they carried that with them.
All those years.
Yeah. All those years. And at that time, Rick and I were actually hanging out together a lot because I was I was dating this guy, and we would all go out and shoot pool, and we were just hanging out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one night I was at this bar with my dad, and I still call him my dad because he was my dad.
Yeah.
Um, and we were shooting pool, and I called him dad,
Mm-hmm.
and he asked me not to call him dad in public.
Oh, wow.
And because there were all these women there that he was very attractive.
Uh-huh.
My parents were movie star beautiful. Like
Wow.
my mom looked like Jane Mansfield,
Oh
and
my
Rick
God.
looked like Tony Curtis. I mean, they walked into the room. They were gorgeous. My mom
Wow.
had legs for days.
Wow.
Legs for days. I was so disappointed that I didn't have that tall, like I wasn't tall like all the women in my family. Like my grandmother was 6 feet. My aunt was almost 6 feet. My mom was like 5'9", and here I am, 5'5".
Wow.
And anyway, he said, don't call me dad in public, because he didn't want all these women in the bar to know that because then they think he's there with a younger woman, you
Oh,
know? Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was like, not to worry.
He wanted them to believe that like you were his date.
He wanted them to believe
Like, look
that.
at that stud with that young girl.
Exactly. He wanted them to believe that I wasn't his daughter at the very least.
Because then he's going to be too old or something, or he's not
Who knows what
available.
they're thinking, but who says that?
Yeah,
Who says
it's
that?
odd. Yeah, yeah, very odd. Especially if you were his daughter, for him to
Exactly.
say that, it doesn't really make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so I was like, dude, not a problem. I
yeah.
never called him dad again, ever.
Isn't it interesting that they named you after him?
Actually, that's the other story.
Okay.
Here's the other story. So my name, Ricci Carol King, is his last name. I was told that I was named after him. That was the other story, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The truth is,
Uh-huh.
I am completely named after my mother. So
Okay.
my mother and her friends, when they would go from Pomona down to the beach, down to Seal Beach or Huntington Beach or wherever they would go to meet boys, they would give them fake names.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's fake name was Ricky.
Oh,
Her middle name is Carol.
okay. Wow.
I was named after my mother.
Wow. You were named after her fake name and her middle
I
name.
was named after her fake name and her middle name.
And
And so,
there's symbolism in that too, because
yes,
because your father wasn't really your father. That was fake.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, again, I love the reality so much
Yes.
more.
Yes.
It
Wow.
tells it tells so much more about
Yes.
who they are and who we are in relationship, and what all of these soul contracts. And then my sister Randy has Rick's middle name was Lee, and her middle name is Lee. And then my sister Ronnie has my grandmother's name as her middle name. And then my brother Derek's middle name is my grandfather's name. And, so
Do you
that's,
still have relations with all your siblings, or what's the
I have a friendship with my sister, my youngest sister,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister Randy and I, we wish each other a happy birthday. That's about it. We're very, very different, and there's a lot of unhealed stuff there I think on her part,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just very different. And
Mm.
she's still very lost in a lot of the stories and trying to find. I found out she has been really digging into Rick's side of the family, and she went to a big family reunion, I think this last summer, she said, in Tennessee.
Mm.
And she's really trying to find herself too,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
it explains why I just never had a bond with them.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next sibling is Derek. He is homeless. He's suffers from mental illness as a result of drug addiction, and is homeless,
Mm.
unhoused, by choice
Mm.
in the Long Beach area.
Oh.
And then my other two brothers are deceased. My younger two brothers are deceased. And then
Mm.
there's my brother John, who I don't think I could ever find him through ancestry because we don't have the same father. But I think my sister Randy has tried to find him, and Ronnie doesn't care.
And he just disappeared or something, or
Well,
he's
his adoptive parents kept in touch with my grandmother, I think until he was like 3 years old, and then it stopped. It wasn't an open adoption, and
mm.
just out of the kindness. And I remember I remember early photos of him, and he did look a little like my brother Sean, who came afterward. So he could have been also been Rick's, but I don't know.
So
But
all of your brothers are deceased except for one. You don't know where he is because he was
Mhm.
adopted.
No, one of my brothers was adopted. My other brother is still alive,
Okay.
but but no one knows how to contact. I mean, he doesn't have a phone number. He's
Oh,
living,
because he's unhoused, right? You said that. Yeah.
yeah, living on the
Yes.
beach in Long Beach.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm. Wow. What an upbringing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was, yeah. But it's all there in the chart,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. How
It's
so?
all
How's that reflected in your chart from your
Well,
perspective?
I think, from my understanding of Gemini, because it is in my fourth house, my South Node is in
Mm-hmm.
my fourth house, and it's my IC. There's a criminal element there. There's,
Because
merchants and
Gemini
thieves.
is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the god of thieves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's merchants
Mm-hmm.
and thieves. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are, several aspects that I think that, speak to that. But I think more than anything that my Chiron is and my journey to find where I belong is like I was gifted this family that I
Mm.
would never connect to
Mm.
because I wasn't meant to.
Mm.
I wasn't meant to be a part of a big happy family
Yes.
because I would have gotten stuck in that, and I would have
Mm-hmm.
felt safe in that, and I would not have gone out in search of. I wouldn't be who I am today, and I,
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for anything. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
change anything, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Not a
Yes.
thing. Not the
Yes.
beatings, not the fear, not the despair, not the loneliness. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
change any of it.
Mm. Yeah.
And I don't think that I would be the teacher that I have become without all of that. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have the compassion. I wouldn't have the empathy. I have a story that I have literally made multiple therapists cry.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Therapists aren't supposed to cry, right?
Yeah.
I could tell this story in a way that could bring tears to people's eyes, but I can't tell it that way anymore because I'm not a victim of it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you talk a little bit about your brother and his passing?
Sean,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So that was really a spiritual turning point for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so so my brother Sean was he was born, he's 10 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just something about our relationship right from the beginning. I mean, somewhere I've got to try and find it. There's a photo of me holding him. I'm holding him like this, right? And I'm 10 years old,
Wow.
but I look like I'm a 16-year-old mother, like a young mother. And because I always wore my hair very mature, it's in this, Marlo Thomas kind of, flip. And I'm holding him up and I'm just looking at him and I'm so proud. And he was so beautiful. He was so beautiful. You know how sometimes babies are just beautiful from the minute that they're born. And Sean was that. He was so beautiful and just, sweetness, pure sweetness. And so we were very close because I was like his other mother or his mother. And he just had joy. And because he was the youngest, he didn't get the violence we kind of we all protected him from that,
You
right?
took the brunt of all of that.
We took the brunt. Yeah. And yeah, he was just so sweet. And we shared music, and that was one of the things that one of the positives was that my parents had really good taste in music, and they're, we listened to a lot of music and dancing, and so I grew up with, like the best R&B, and just, music and the library, like, and it's interesting. I think about Pisces, my part of fortune being in Pisces, and dreamy stuff, dreamy stuff just always brought me joy and happiness, and it did him as well. And so we loved to sing songs together, and I just wanted something better for him. I wanted a better life for him, and I was going to make sure that he got to go to college, and I was going to make sure that, as soon as I could get on my feet financially, like he could come and live with me, he could live in a better neighborhood. Like I had all these plans. And he was 14, and he was really into skateboarding and, surfing. And he was just your typical Southern California. They lived in Southeast Los Angeles, but he spent as much time on the beach as he could. And he was just your typical Southern California, blonde, blue-eyed boy. But he was also really loved church and loved his church community. And, he would talk about Jesus all the time. And at that time, I was like a really vocal atheist. Which I think about, I can just laugh at all this, my ninth house Saturn in Scorpio.
Yes. Yeah. Not so accepting.
I've explored the gamut.
Yes.
And I would, and my mom would, I would be like, dude, you got to, stop going to church, stop reading the Bible, stop doing all that. And my mom would get so upset. And he would just say, Mom, it's okay. Like, I love Jesus, and she can't convince, but I love her. Because I love Jesus and I love Ricky, and we believe different. He's a perfect example of how people with different beliefs can love each other.
Yes. Amazing.
Right?
Yes, totally. Absolutely.
And so different than what we're dealing with now. And so in 1980, they're like in late 1970, late 1970s, 1979, 1980, there were these young boys that were being found murdered all through Southern California. And they had named the serial killer, they had named him the freeway killer, because they were getting picked up hitchhiking on the freeways or just off the freeways and that sort of thing. And my brother, so he was 14 at the time, and had a girlfriend so he lived in Southgate, and he had a girlfriend across the bridge in Downey, and he rode his skateboard over to see her.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got dark, and it was in May, and it started raining, and he didn't ride his skateboard home. He thought he would take the bus home, and he was abducted on the bus stop by William Bonin, who was the freeway killer, and his accomplice, and he was murdered.
Wow.
And it's like your whole life just changes in an instant. And it's like everything, as awful as everything that had happened to me had been. And I want to backtrack just a little bit and say that when I was 13, I went to live with my grandparents, and I got away from my mom and dad and that culture. And even though living with my grandparents was very difficult, and there was a lot of I had a schizophrenic aunt that lived there as well with her two sons, and there was a lot of chaos or whatever. I became a part of a wonderful group of friends, and I lived like this double Gemini life.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I had this part of my life was idyllic. My friends group, and the parties and the dances and all of it, and the amazing boys that I dated and everything. And then I still had this hellish family. So it was so South Node, so Gemini IC, so Gemini South Node, so Gemini IC. But that was really when I started reaching for my North Node. There was something, there was an expansion. There was something happening there. So I lived separate from my brother. He was still with my mom, right? I lived separate from my brother, but we remained close. And so he's 14, I'm 24. I am just in the midst of recovering from a few years of really, again, my trying to belong to something and really going down a dark hole of drug abuse and so I'm just going to say substance abuse, because it was all, it was everything.
Yes.
Except for needles.
Mm-hmm.
I had a boundary.
Yeah. But you were experimenting and you were getting into.
I had a boundary.
Yeah.
And I think my boundary was, I know that's addictive. I know that is not something that you come back from, because that was Rick's drug of choice, was heroin. So I had walked away from that, and I was, really living this clean life and really pursuing a connection to something. Like it was like I had kind of moved into agnosticism out of atheism. And so when Sean was murdered, it kind of, my back was, kind of up against the wall, and I had to surrender.
What'd that mean?
I had to surrender. It meant that I knew that there was a plan that I needed to figure out what the plan was. There's a plan. There's something that these things are not random. I just knew that.
So it
And
opened you up in a sense.
it cracked me wide open.
Mm-hmm.
It cracked me wide open. It
Mm-hmm.
leveled me.
Yes.
It
So
leveled.
what shifted for you in that moment and beyond? Because I think of your moon in the 8th house,
Yeah.
that's the house of death, and going through that sort of trauma, not only with your parents and recognizing that your father wasn't really your father, but then to experience the murder of your younger brother.
Yes.
That's like the deepest transformation that I could imagine.
Yes. And in retrospect, I look to my Pluto,
Mm-hmm.
my 7th house Pluto in Leo.
What does that mean to you?
It means living heart centered with a strong backbone.
And what is that exactly in reality? What does it mean to be heart-centered with a strong
Because
backbone?
when we say heart, when I talk to and this is something that I really had to really think about this in working with my clients, because when we talk about being heart centered, especially when we talk to men
Mm-hmm.
about being heart centered, when we talk about people that have been wounded like I have been,
Mm-hmm.
and have suffered, when we talk about being heart centered, it sounds fragile.
It does.
Yes, yes. It sounds exposed. It
Mm.
sounds, you know what I'm saying? Like you've already
Mm.
had your heart broken and now you're going to put it out there again. But
Mm.
that's what I'm here for.
Mm.
That's the very thing that I'm here for.
That's interesting because, like, when I think, and I totally hear what you're saying, but when I hear open heart,
Mm-hmm.
to me, an open heart is the strongest heart because it takes strength to open your heart. It's the heart that's closed that is weak.
We're saying the same thing. That when people hear
Uh-huh.
heart centered, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's out here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we're closed off. But
Mm-hmm.
but with Leo, this is the gorgeousness of Leo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so into Leo right now. So into
you're
Leo.
you're always into Leo because that's your descendant, so that's what you're attracted to.
I'm really into it. I've really been into it for a while now because Pluto has been opposing my Uranus in Leo, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my 5th house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to play.
Yeah.
I'm here to play. But it's different when you say because I think of Cancer,
Mm-hmm.
is not doesn't have that backbone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of feelings there.
Mm-hmm.
It feels safer in Leo
Mm-hmm.
because
What's
there's so much strength around it.
Yeah, it's the heart of the lion.
It's the heart of the lion or the
Yeah.
lioness.
Yeah, the
Um,
lioness, yes.
and that's where I feel like I really identify with that. And I should go back and see what was I've never done that actually, to go look and see what was aspecting my Pluto at that time.
I'm sure we looked at it over our time together. We looked at those dates in
Not coming
1980.
to memory right now, but
Yeah.
I've really been feeling it. I've really been
Yeah.
feeling that.
Should we take
Um,
a quick look just to
oh yes, totally.
what was it was May of
May
1980?
19th, May
What's that?
19th, May
May
19th, 1980.
Wow, that was the day after Mount St. Helens erupted.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the North Node was in Leo on that day. And it
Okay.
was at 24 degrees in Leo, and it was conjunct your Pluto at 27 degrees. It was also sextile your Neptune at 26 degrees in Libra in the 8th house. Pluto was at 19 degrees in Libra, conjunct your Mercury. at
Mm-hmm.
20 degrees in Libra, also forming a trine to your to your ascendant at 18 degrees in Aquarius. And it was early that morning around 4 a.m. on May 19th was your moon, or the transiting moon, was conjunct your Uranus and opposite your Chiron.
Mm.
There was also, there was Saturn was in Virgo, squaring your north node at 21
Mm-hmm.
degrees in Sagittarius. Saturn was at 20 degrees in Virgo, and Neptune was conjunct your north node at 21 degrees in Sagittarius. So you had the north node in Leo, Saturn in Virgo, Pluto in Libra, and Neptune in Sagittarius, all aligning with your north node in Sagittarius. So
Wow.
those four transiting points were
Yeah.
aligning with your north node. And that's like, you look at that, and that's cracking you open in terms of following your soul's purpose, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
have faith.
Oh, just
It's like your
yeah.
your little brother had this faith,
Yes.
and then he was taken from you, but it's like his loss brought about greater faith in you.
Yes. And the interesting thing too was I had a lot of peace during that time that I didn't know why,
Hmm.
and I didn't think I deserved it,
Hmm.
but I had a lot of peace that I would understand someday, that it
Hmm.
was going to make sense someday,
Wow.
and it eventually did,
Yeah.
because the other part, the happy ending to
Hmm.
that story, well,
Yes.
it's still unfolding, was, a few years ago, I started working with this medium, and it's such a great story because it was actually my youngest daughter got a reading with this medium, and obviously my children never knew my brother because he died when he was a teenager, and my brother came through in this
Hmm.
reading,
Hmm.
and because my children know about my brother, and she knew enough about the circumstances that when he was trying to identify himself, she knew that it was him.
Hmm.
And he came through her reading. He hijacked her reading basically
Wow.
to
Wow.
get to me.
And what did he say?
He said, just let Ricci know that, well, first of all, that he didn't suffer,
Hmm.
that his guides and angels came. He was afraid. He totally
Mm-hmm.
admitted to that. Like, he was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
He experienced,
Great terror.
terror.
Yep.
But his guides and angels came and took him out of his body
Mm-hmm.
before he felt anything. And they
Hmm.
would not allow him to look back.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
he
I
only,
just got the chills right now.
right?
I just got the chills. Yeah.
And he only knows that he suffered because of my suffering.
Hmm. He felt your suffering for
He
his
felt my
loss.
suffering. He
Mm-hmm.
felt my suffering. He felt me suffering
Mm-hmm.
at the thought of what his last minutes were.
My
And
God.
so he wanted me to know that he didn't suffer, and that he had total peace, and that he's with me always. And he,
Mm.
anyway, he, obviously I did a reading with the medium afterwards. So my daughter calls me at work, and she was like, this just happened. And I'm like, okay, send me the information. And I booked a reading with her. And it, again, one of the most, it broke me open.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we have that experience over and over and over and over again. And it was one of the hottest days on record here in Seattle. So hot. And nobody in Seattle has air conditioning. And I scheduled this reading, and I did it in my backyard, and I, in my garden space, which is magical unto itself. And I put out a bucket of ice water to put my feet in, and I and I soaked towels because it was like 105 degrees or something
Wow.
that day.
Wow.
We're not we don't
Yeah.
have
No,
climate.
totally. Yeah.
So Sean came through. My brother Sean came through. My best friend Luana came through, who died from cancer in 2012, and my grandfather came through. And a lot of what Sean told me, he had already told Bailey in her reading, but he just really wanted me to let go of that. He just really wanted me to be able to release that, to know that. And he was so honest, like, yes, of course there was terror. But now
it doesn't feel that anymore.
It doesn't. I don't feel that. And then he let me know, that he's always looking over my son. I have an adult son with autism. He's always looking over my son, and he's always with me. And he talked about riding in the car with me while I'm coming home from work and singing, because I don't sing other than when I'm alone in my car, or when I'm alone. I sing in the garden. I sing in my car. I have a terrible singing voice. And he's like, I'm there, I'm with you. And he's with me all.
Yes. Wow. Who is the medium that you worked with?
Her name is Carlene, and Carlene Fry. Okay. And she's in Central Washington, and I highly recommend her. Every person that I have ever.
Central Washington, like Wenatchee, or?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, wow. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe I'll look her up next time I'm in town over there.
Yes. Every
Carlene
person
Fry.
For her, she has had an extraordinary experience.
Carlene Fry.
Carlene Fry. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And she's very not tech. She does it over the phone.
Yeah. Old school.
Old school. No technology. She's very, she's kind of like me. Like she doesn't have a website. I don't have a website. But she is really good. She is really, really good. Very clear messages. My biological father came through in a reading.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's all my mother. Interestingly, my mother's never come through. And my brother tried to bring her through, and she refused. And she was like, just not into it. Not into it. Yeah. And that's fine. I have peace around all of it. I understand that I don't have to understand everything.
Yes.
That these were soul contracts. And again, it's like that. I would have been a different person.
Yeah.
If I would have had, like
a different past.
Yeah. And I would be attracting different souls. And I love the souls that I attract. I do very little marketing. The majority of my
led you, let's go back a little bit though. Like what led you to astrology in the first place? What is your origin story with astrology?
This is one of my favorite stories. During the pandemic, so I've had an interest in astrology like since I was a teenager. I had Linda Goodman's, sun sign book and everything. But I kind of have dipped in and out of it because, the information are out there around Virgo. I'm a Virgo sun. And the information out there around Virgo, and this is true of all the signs, is people tend to focus on the lowest vibration of a sign.
That's what's wrong with you? You're a Virgo. Oh,
like your story. I love your story about meeting a woman in the car, and you're a Scorpio.
Run. Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like Scorpio.
Oh yeah.
We're soulmates.
Yeah, yeah.
Give me that Scorpio energy. So, with Virgos, it's, perfectionist and, hyper organized, super critical, all that. So that was all I knew. And I didn't really identify with it. I didn't really, kind of stern and virginal, very
Yeah.
pure.
Oh, yes, yeah. The
That's not me.
virgin. That's you.
That's
Yeah.
not me. That's not me.
Mother of 4 kids. You're the
Mother
virgin.
of 4 kids. Yeah, mother of 4 kids. And I started late. So, but I was always interested in it, and then I would come back to it, and I would put it aside, and I would. But I'm going to say about 10. Well, it's been longer than that now. When did I move in here? 2000, around 2000, and so it's been about almost 15 years. About 15 years ago, I really started. It came on my radar again, and there was like new information, and people were talking about sun signs and rising signs, and I had my chart done, but she used equal house.
This was somebody you went to for a reading?
Yes, she just showed up in my social circle, and she said, "Can I do a read? I really want to do a reading for you. I'm really interested in your chart." And so again, it didn't
resonate because it was the equal
some
house.
things did, but and people ask me why I don't do equal house or why people do equal house. And I said, because it's like 50-50.
It's easier. It's easier to understand.
And some of it's going to be accurate.
Yeah,
it's going to be accurate enough.
Accurate enough. Yeah.
It's going to be accurate enough.
Yeah.
That people are going to relate to it. But I just, again, I was like, no, this is not. There's got to be more to it. There's got to be more to it.
Yeah.
So it's 2020, and it's, we're all quarantined, and I love that we share this in common, because that was one of the best times of your life.
Yeah.
That you share all the time. And it was mine too. I am stuck at home, not having to work my, soul-sucking retail job, and getting paid to be home with my precious son and work in my garden. And we had like one of the best springs in Seattle.
That's the Virgo part of you, though, working in the garden.
Yeah. I'm in the earth. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me grow you some food. Let me grow you some herbs.
Yeah.
Let me make some homemade medicine. That's I have a lot of that 6th house energy. But I'm just out there every day listening to podcasts and working in the garden. And I was like, I wonder if I was listening to mostly crime podcasts before that. And I was like, I wonder if there are any astrology podcasts. And so, I look them up, and lo and behold, the weekly transit comes up. And I think it was your 3rd episode.
Wow.
I think it was your 3rd episode, if I remember correctly. And
you're back there in the beginning.
I was there right from the beginning, and I just really, really dug it. And I was listening to this other guy. I can't remember that. I don't even know why I listened to it, because every time I listened to it, I was like, I don't like this guy. I don't like his energy. But I was just trying to soak up the information. And then I would add some, and I would delete some, and I would add some. But every week I was just like waiting for the weekly transit to drop. And that was my thing. That was my jam. You and Ingrid.
Wow.
And I thought, I want to get my chart read again. And I was looking for an astrologer. And I thought I wanted a woman. But I kept listening to you, and I was like, I want to book a reading with this guy. And then eventually I did. And when you read my chart, I'm sure you remember, I cried through almost the entire reading.
Yeah.
I could cry now thinking about it. because you saw me, and I have this experience now when I read charts.
Mm-hmm.
You saw me, and you communicated to me the me that I was in search of.
Mm.
If that makes any sense. Like, it was like my soul was like the whole time saying, that's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth, which I didn't have that experience. I'd had one other reading like years ago too. And I think that person used equal house or whole house too. But it was like, and you were so kind.
Mm.
You were so kind. You were so, there was no judgment. It's like, it's all you, I mean, you can see it all.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, it was not like the traumatic, painful, violent kinds of things that had opened me up in the past,
Mm-hmm.
but it cracked me open again in a new way, like a new layer. It's my friend Heidi, I talk about my friend Heidi Hazen all the time, and she has this presentation that she does with Russian dolls, and she takes them apart, and that last little doll inside is, the soul. And that's what it's like. But it's like, instead of just lifting the doll off, it's like it's getting cracked off. It's like the hammer,
peeling the onion,
Yes. But it's peeling the onion, just to me, that's never resonated with me either. Some of these things are painful.
Yes.
Some of them are painful. They're excruciating.
Yeah.
And
so it is like cracking it open. And
it's like, it's a pressure. It's like, it's an explosion, But this opened me in a different, where it wasn't, it didn't have that pain. It was a relief. It was more like somebody found the key to the treasure chest.
Wow.
And something opened up. And from that day, from that minute, I was like, oh, I want to do this for someone.
Yes.
I want to do this. This is medicine.
Yes.
This is medicine. I just got a big prescription of something that, and I want to know more about it. I want to research it. I want to know the side effects. I want to know if it can be used off label. And so I just, I think the first thing I did after that was, I think I did a moon cycle class with you. And then was that first, or did I do Soul Path first? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I don't remember exactly if you did a moon class next, or I feel like we started working together pretty quickly after that first reading.
And that was in January. And then, we did. I was like, and I looked at my finances. And I had been saving all of this money to get work done on the house. And
you decided to remodel the soul instead?
I decided to remodel the soul. I decided to do the work. And so when people push back, on, the financial side of it, and then I know what they're doing in other areas of their life, I'm like, oh, you're not ready.
Yeah.
You're not ready. And that's okay. There's no judgment.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. No. Yeah.
But this investment, everything that has come since I made this investment where I worked with you for 14
Yeah.
months and did the, what do you call it?
The cosmic pathway.
Cosmic pathway. Cosmic pathway. Doing the cosmic pathway and doing moon cycle, and I really have expanded my I had already expanded my moon practice, and I do more in my moon manifesting than I moon cycle class really for me is community and affirmation.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is the thing, like people say to me all the time, like, why do you still need an astrologer if you can read your own chart? And I'm like, because I'm still a human with blind spots. God will just see right through them.
Yeah.
And I need that. And I know that I need that. And my soul knows that I need that. So this relationship is always going to be in my medicine chest. It's always going to be in my medicine chest. And I also know, that about, I have all this Leo energy, I have all these, planets in Leo. So I also know that I have to, my ego needs to be kept in check as well. But the interesting thing was how quickly it came to me, because it's a symbolic language, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The symbolic language.
Yeah.
And I just got it.
Well, you were hungry. You were hungry to learn, and you were very committed to learning.
I was that precocious
like
Ricci.
when you said that you wanted, I want to do this. I want to, be a facilitator for someone else to have the experience that I just had with Scott. That you didn't just say those words. You actually put it into action. So, share a little bit about, what has transformed or transpired for you since we started working together, almost 3 years ago.
So much. So those gifts that I talked about at the beginning, that, those intuitive gifts that I had as a child, and they they came up all throughout my life. And I would try to find someone to talk to about them. And, the eyes would roll up in the head, and people would, the side eye and stuff. And that, my journey of belonging, I would just, I would shut it off. I would just shut it off because I didn't want to be the weirdo. But I've always been the weirdo. I've always been.
That's Aquarius rising.
That's Aquarius rising.
Yeah.
That's Aquarius rising.
Yeah.
Yes. I've always been the weirdo. And that's Chiron opposing my, my natal Chiron opposing my Uranus.
And it's wild too, because you have 4 planets aligning with your ascendant, Jupiter, the moon, Mercury, and Saturn. So, you've got a very intense, big personality, that's uniquely you, Ricci. So, so what was the shifting that occurred?
That was the other thing too, is like I was always trying to make myself small, because that was a part of, my upbringing as well. And it's really been a part of my relationships is, just dial it back a little bit,
And I'm like, no, dial it up.
No, yeah, exactly. It was like you saw me and you gave me the permission, and I don't have anyone in my life right now. This is one of the things that's changed. I do not have a single person in my life right now that would dare tell me to dial it back.
Beautiful.
Not a one.
Yes.
And my frequency has changed so much. It's like, I have some people in my life, but they're way, way in the background. They're like silhouettes. Like we are not interacting anymore. And I don't even think that they would have the nerve to say that to me. My gifts really started developing. I started, getting past these layers of embarrassment to talk about what I was experiencing. And I just started talking about it to my children, to my friends. And those are a lot of the friends that disappeared. And my daughters have been, and their partners have been so extraordinarily accepting of my transformation. And it's enriched our relationships so much.
Love that.
Because they have watched me try to fit in to so many different spaces.
Yeah.
And they see my joy now. They see they see me living in my authentic joy. They see what's happening in my life, what I'm attracting.
Yes.
The abundance.
Yes.
They see how healthy I am. And, you know, I'm doing things that no one in my lineage has done of women.
You're a trailblazer.
No one so I'm healing ancestral trauma. I'm healing for the women. I'm healing for my mother.
That's right there. That is, I just have to jump in because that's a point of your North Node, an example of how, you know, your North Node gets you what you desire, which is your South Node frequency. Like your South Node in the 4th house really desires that, you know, healing of family and lineage and ancestry. But the more that you focus on it, the further you go from it. Where you know, with the North Node in the 10th house, it's about career and goals and legacy, as you like to say, with the 10th house. The more that you've worked on your, what's that?
Devotion, highest purpose.
Exactly. So the more that you've focused on that, now you're setting an example for your children in the most positive way, and you are healing that ancestral trauma by being a trailblazer and doing something that no woman in your lineage has ever done before.
Exactly.
So empowering.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm, you know, I'm out in my garden, and this is a few years ago. I walk out, you know, and I have a double lot in Seattle, which is very unusual. I have a lot of land for being in the city. I'm in West Seattle. And I just started getting these channeled messages like, you are going to create a wellness space here. You're going to create a place where people are going to come and heal. And it's going to be affordable, and it's going to be inclusive, and it's going to help to heal the community. And all of this stuff is like it's coming in so fast and furious this one morning, Scott. Like I'm standing with a cup of coffee in my backyard thinking like, where am I going to garden? And there's one part of my yard that's been very hard for me it's very hard soil, and it's a steep hill, and I kind of just pretend like I don't see it. And then all of a sudden my soul is like, look, this is what you're going to do. I'm looking over here, and it's like, nope. This is what it's going to be. And that shed needs to come down. And this is and I didn't question it for a minute. I just started. I just got my gloves on.
Followed the voice. If you build it, they will come.
They will come. And I actually watched that movie, and I've recommended it to so many of my friends who are having similar experiences. And I'm like, go watch Field of Dreams.
And for you to like that movie
the assignment.
For you to like that movie as an anti-sports person is just shows how powerful that film is.
Exactly. But it's not about sports.
It's not about sports.
It's not about sports.
It's not. Sports are just like the I don't know. It's the top layer.
And the way you talk about sports, you make me not like sports. Like I'm not going to go to a sporting event.
Right.
But, you know, like when you were talking about the baseball player, what's his name?
Shohei Ohtani.
Ohtani, yes. Like, oh, I was like riveted. And then I can't even tell you how many conversations I have had with people since that conversation, because I know things about him now, and I can actually engage in a conversation about a sports figure. And then I bring in the astrology, and they're intrigued.
Wow.
They're intrigued because it's another layer, you know?
Love that.
So I'm building, so my practice is called Soul Path, and I'm building Soul Path Sanctuary, and it's all it's all timed with my astrology, and Jupiter's in Gemini in my fourth house right now. And Uranus is in Taurus in my third house, and we're having this conversation, and I'm creating curriculum. I'm being invited to teach. I've had this beta group of women, these amazing women that I could start crying again, that I asked to participate in this group and to let me, they were clients of mine already, but to let me work with them for a year and use this experience to build curriculum.
Wow.
And each one of them has shown up so transparently and generously and has allowed me to use them as they're like my muses, and from that, I've been writing curriculum like all Sagittarius season. It's like I'm really dialed
flowing
into
out of you.
It's flowing out of me. I wake up from dreams, and then I have to make notes in my phone.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I want to add this and add this and add this. But as I'm doing it, things are coming through. And I know I used to send you podcasts all the time and say, have you listened to this? Have you listened? And you're like, I don't listen to anybody. I don't read anything. And I stopped because I stopped. I listened to you. I still listen to you. And I don't always agree with you.
Oh, okay.
I don't always agree with you, but I always get something out of it because it always takes me back to why, how, where, like what am I missing that he's experiencing it or seeing it that way? And then it makes me want to go and explore. And it's never like I'm right and he's wrong. That's never like, and this is why I love talking to people with other perspectives now. I've been talking to so many people that voted for Trump to understand their perspective.
Yes.
Where they're coming from. And the answers have been, not a single person has had the same reason.
Wow.
And I shared this with you, and I know you shared this on a podcast too. What I am finding now, some of them where our values are not, like there's nothing in our lives that's the same.
Yeah,
but
you're not hearing them and saying, "Oh, well, I should have voted for Trump." Like,
exactly,
but you at least understand where they're coming from.
And I understand, and again, that's that Gemini. That's the higher frequency of Gemini. And that's one of the things that I have that has happened is in reaching for my North Node. Which you so patiently taught me. My South Node frequency is up. So it's that alchemy. It's that alchemy. That's what we want. We're not eliminating the shadow.
No, exactly. It's not eliminating the South Node or the shadow.
Exactly. We're embracing
integrating it, elevating it.
Recognizing it. We're recognizing when we're in that lower frequency. So it's raised that frequency to where I can be curious and not be paralyzed by curiosity, where I can be curious and then act on it.
And still have your perspective.
And still have my perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that duality, that's what I love about Gemini. When people talk about shit talk Geminis, I just get very defensive. I defend all the signs now. But very so all of these gifts started coming through, messages started getting channeled, and I just stopped studying. I stopped studying astrology and just started embodying it.
Yes, exactly. Living it, embodying it, and really, asking my guides and elders and my guides and my ancestors
to show me what to do with the energy, you know. And it's like we talk about being in a, and I'm practicing this, and it's really changing me, and my clients are practicing it, and it's really changing them. And I'm not trying to convince anyone that it doesn't, you know, feel it. If you're not feeling it, fine. But we talk about, like, I'll use Sagittarius season for an example because I'm just loving this Sagittarius season. We talk about it as everyone's a Sagittarius right now, you know, and then everyone's a Capricorn. And then it's like we move out of the energy, and we can't access it anymore. And the way that I'm experiencing it, and the way that what's been channeled to me and what I've been guided and led is, in this moment, you are deficient in something. There is a deficiency in your energy field. That Sagittarius, that Jupiter, that Sagittarius can infuse right now. Right now, it's low-hanging fruit. So these are the qualities of the highest frequency. I'm talking about, you might be in the low frequency, but I'm talking about getting into the high frequency.
Right.
You embody it. You lean into it. You are a Sagittarius. And you don't lose that when you move into Capricorn season. And some of it you already have, because you've been through Sagittarius season your whole life and unknowingly have been soaking the energies up, right?
Yes.
What is so fabulous about Sagittarius right now that is absent in your energy field that you want to take with you to help you get to the next place, you know? And then we go into Capricorn season. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous way to live.
Well, can you share a little bit about your journey from, you know, to become a professional astrologer or guide? You know, how did that all happen?
Well, I started talking about it, you know, and very similar to your story that you share, you know. It's like I said, I would talk to my kids about it. I would talk, you know, and until people just are like, shut up.
Is that all you want to talk about?
Now I do. I am inclined to ask for consent. And I'm very big on consent. I'm very big on consent with my clients. Like, I ask for permission to tell them the hard things that they need to hear. Because then I know that then it's on them. It's their responsibility. It's their accountability. You're paying me. I have something to tell you. It's not going to be easy for you to hear.
Right.
But I need to tell you. Let me know when you're ready to hear it.
Yeah.
You know? So I do ask for consent astrologically. But I started hearing the signs and the planets and the houses when I was in conversations with people. I started really experiencing their astrology.
Yeah, it's like translating into you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was talking to this gentleman the other day, and he proudly told me he was a Gemini sun, which I already knew by the level of the conversation.
Yeah.
But I also knew that he was an 8th house sun. I'm like, I'm pretty sure your sun is in the 8th house, and you're giving off a lot of Scorpio. And if I, you know, after a few days of conversing, he gave me his chart information, and sure enough, he has an 8th house stellium, and he's a Scorpio rising, and he's a Leo. Oh, I heard the Leo too, and he's a Leo moon and a Leo midheaven. But I heard it all. Nothing in his chart surprised me. The extent to what always surprises me is to the extent to how accurate I experienced it, right?
Yeah.
But it really also made me feel very comfortable and safe with this person because they were showing up very authentically. When you
Mm-hmm.
show up and your chart is lighting up in my brain and I haven't even looked at it yet,
Mm.
you're showing up as you, right?
Yes.
And then I've had other experiences where I've had conversations with people and I do their chart and I'm like, oh, it was just one big body mask that
Mm-hmm.
when we first met.
Mm.
And so now I know that I have to take care in asking them to remove their mask,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But to answer your question, I was asking, people what their sign was or their birth time or whatever all the time to wanting
Mm-hmm.
to get to, know them and experience them more authentically. And people didn't know. And then they just started asking me, what I was experiencing in them. And then they would go and they would get their birth certificate or whatever because they wanted a reading. And
Yeah.
so, like you, I was just reading a lot of charts for people
Mm-hmm.
out of my curiosity.
Yeah.
And then out of, one day, a woman I was still working as a beauty stylist at Nordstrom, and I'm talking to this woman, and astrology comes up, and she said, "What would you charge? What would you charge me
Mm-hmm.
to, read my chart?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, eventually I have to start charging for this."
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
And
I
that was
remember
it.
that.
That was
Yeah.
the beginning. From
Yeah.
that moment on, and then I just started introducing myself as an astrologer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my first love, as a matter of fact, who's one of my dearest friends, and he came over. He lives half of the year in Mexico and half of the year in Canada. And but he has family here in Seattle. When he travels through, he comes to visit, and we're having this conversation at my dining room table about astrology. And he goes, "Yeah, I was telling my niece or something like that that I was coming to see you." And she asked, "Oh, what does she do?" And he said, "Oh, she's an intuitive astrologer." And I had never used that term
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, yeah,
That
I'm an
works.
intuitive astrologer."
Yeah. That works.
That's what I am.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Hmm. Amazing.
And then I just set the intention to build this practice.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute that I said that I was an intuitive astrologer, people just started coming to me.
Wow.
People were being referred to me already, but more and more people were coming to me. If I ever go out on my own to, anywhere in, like there's this lovely wine bar that I go to sometimes. When I go anywhere alone, I always come home with a client. I
Mm.
always end up having a conversation with someone and
Wow.
getting a reading. I did an event a few weeks ago that I told you about, and I,
Yes.
shared some information there, and I left with 4 clients.
Wow.
And it's, again, I don't have a web page. I'm very anti-capitalist. I'm very anti-corporation. And I have really checked in with my, guides about this. And this
Mm-hmm.
is the way that it's supposed to be right now. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that I will never have a website.
Right.
If I had a website, I don't think I could handle, you know, a lot more traffic than I
So
already
all
have.
the people that you're meeting like out in the wild,
Out in
in
the wild,
in reality,
in
not
reality,
online.
in reality.
Yeah.
Some of them online. I
Okay.
have had people that, yeah, I have had people that through my lives that book through my
Mm-hmm.
Instagram live, but they show up on my Instagram live because someone else told them to,
And
right?
so if somebody listening to this podcast wants to work with you, how would they find you?
On Instagram.
And what is that?
It's Ms. Ricci Carol King. So it's MIZRICCICAROLEKING.
Okay,
It's my
cool.
whole name.
We'll put it in the show notes so
Okay.
people know how to connect with you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And I
Yes.
started out wanting, this
Mm-hmm.
story because I was, a big part of the reason why I wanted to explore astrology was because I wanted so desperately to find a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And
That was like
and
me
it
too.
never really, I've had a lot of relationships
Yeah.
because, I have that seventh house stellium, and
Yep.
that's how I grew
Totally.
up.
No.
I've had a lot of relationships, but I've never had a partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never had a partner. And I'm in this last, part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what's coming to some degree with Pluto and Aquarius. And I know, I'm looking ahead a little bit, and I'm like, I really want to really be with someone through this,
Well,
like really be with them.
you were married, but you
I
don't
wasn't
consider
married, he
that
was my
he was not a
partner.
partner.
He was the opposite of a partner.
But I can totally relate because I'm a seventh house sun.
I
And so
know.
like you, we're both seventh house suns. So, relationships are very important to us, but
Yes.
they've never really come easy to either
Yes.
of us, And so like my whole thing with astrology also, like you, was like maybe I can find someone by cracking the code of who I am and who I'm supposed to connect with, and
Yeah.
so there's been that
So what,
same. Yeah.
so what ended up happening for me was I found a relationship
Mm-hmm.
unexpectedly, and
Mm.
that was with me.
Mm.
I found out
Yes.
that my human and my soul were not in
Mm-hmm.
alignment. And I look at
Mm.
that seventh house very differently now.
Yes.
Because I see for me, and I see this for my clients that have a lot of seventh house,
What do
placements.
you see?
It is really a marriage of the human and the soul. I mean,
What does
that is,
that mean?
it is an interconnectedness. It is and I have felt this so strongly with this Aries Libra nodal axis that we're in right now. This there's a everything that I was looking for outside of
Uh-huh.
myself, it's already within
See,
me.
that was the thing for me, because like before I met Gabriella, like a week or two before I met Gabriella, I told my therapist, if I'm single the rest of my life, I'm happy because I'm
Yes.
happily single. It's like that seventh house sun, which is Libra, is the seventh sign associated with the seventh house. It's like I had to make peace with being with myself
Yes.
before I could truly invite in a partner that would create balance with me. I had to find that
Absolutely.
balance within myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first house, seventh house axis, all of that. And it's like it's it was a revelation for me, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a divine love.
Mm-hmm.
It's a compassionate love. It's an empathy. I it is truly a love of my shadow and my light
Yes.
that
Yes,
I feel for
exactly. Well, that's the thing. When I first like read my chart and understood what it meant, I was like, wow, okay, this is like I'm seeing parts of myself that I hide from other people.
yes,
And I was like, but that's me. And I was
yes,
able to reconcile that that's me, and it's okay for me
yes,
to be that person, that shadowy dark part of myself that I don't want other people to know. It's like, oh, now it all makes sense. I can truly integrate that part of myself and say, you know what, that's me, and I love myself, and I don't
right,
necessarily have to share that with everyone now, but I can also not try to hide from it myself. I
exactly.
can
I
embrace
don't
it.
share it with everyone,
Right.
but
You don't hide from it.
I don't hide from it, and I have many, many more people that are gravitating to me now
Mm-hmm.
that want that depth.
Yes.
Yeah, because that was a lot of what people were asking me to dial back. You know,
Mm-mm.
you're too deep. You're
Yeah.
too, you're too, you're, and I'm sorry, y'all. My Neptune and my Mercury and my Moon are in the 8th house.
Yeah,
And my
exactly.
Pluto, the deepest, darkest sign or planet,
Yeah.
is in my 7th house.
Yeah.
If you can't go deep and dark, I'm not for you.
Well, and your Mercury in the 8th house, right?
Yes.
The deepest, darkest, most passionate house, the planet of the mind, is aligning with your soul's purpose, your
Yes.
North Node.
I don't
So
know.
you're here to have those deep conversations, those deep experiences, and to share your wisdom in connecting with people in an intimate way.
Yes.
And so because you're able to open up with that depth, you're inviting people to do the same with you, and that's where the transformation takes place that that cracks you open.
Yes.
and you blossom into something new.
Yes.
So you experience that, and now you're experiencing that with your clients.
Yeah, and every experience with every client, it grows me, it expands me. It's and I mean, I know you know this, but it's such a mutual kind
Totally.
of it's such a gorgeous connection.
Yes,
And
like I've learned so much from you. It's not just you learning from me. And I feel that way with all my clients, that I'm, the deeper I get involved with whoever I'm working with, the more that I learn about myself, the more that I learn about my practice, the more that I learn about astrology, the more that I learn about being a guide. And, because each individual that I work with, I'm going to work with a little bit differently. Because it's not a one-size-fits-all jumpsuit. I can't work with you the same way that I work with all my other clients. I've got to tailor it to each individual.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what, it's so funny you say that, because it's like one of the podcasts that back in the day when I was listening to a lot of podcasts that I immediately turned off when I heard I heard the podcaster who was an astrologer saying that she uses a formula, and she uses the same formula with every client. And she's done it for 45 years.
Wow.
And I was like, nope. Nope. And also, she said she was a humanist. She does humanist astrology because she was actually she was doing an interview with a client where some of her podcast is like you do the weekly transit, and then she has one where she has clients on. And the client was asking about her North Node, and she straight up said, I don't work with the North Node.
Oh,
I don't pay any attention to the North Node.
Wow.
Because it's a soul, it's evolutionary astrology. And she doesn't, and I was like, nope, unfollow. Unfollow. Because I'm obsessed with the North Node.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with everyone's North Node. I'm obsessed with your natal North Node. I'm obsessed with where the nodes are transiting in your chart right now. We will fix things.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
Yeah.
When we look at the nodal chart.
That shifts. That's what really shifts people.
And that's what I call the North Node. To me is the low hanging fruit, even though you would probably laugh that I would say that, because it took me so long to access mine. As long as it took me to access mine, or to really, work with it. But I studied all things Sagittarius, because I was determined to get to it. But what's really funny is, like, it came so much easier to me than it comes to some of my other clients. And this is what got me into, and I have a mantra that is where I say to whoever is listening to me, show me. And I asked, because a couple of my clients were really struggling with it. And I was like, why was it so much more accessible to me? Show me. And that was when I learned about progressed charts. They showed me the progressed chart.
Yes.
And in my progressed chart, my progressed sun is at 3 degrees of Sagittarius right now.
Wow.
I am going to be a Sagittarius for the rest of my life.
That's right on your midheaven.
And it's sitting right on my midheaven.
3 degrees in Sagittarius.
3 degrees in Sagittarius. And my ascendant is Gemini.
Wow. Interesting.
I couldn't make it up.
Yes.
I couldn't make it up.
Yes. Wow. Wow, Ricci.
So if you're lucky, at some point in your life, your progressed sun is your North Node sun. It's wild. It's wild.
Yes. Wow. Wow. Well, this is the perfect time to bring you on the podcast then, with
Yes,
with your progressed sun
yes,
conjunct your midheaven. It's your
yes.
time to really shine
And my
and stand
Uranus
in your
is my
power.
third house.
Yes,
Transiting
exactly.
Uranus is my third house.
Revolutionizing your ability to communicate and
Yeah,
connect.
yeah.
So, wow, Ricci. Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you. I mean, I know we could talk for another hour and 45 minutes, but we will. We
But no
will.
one's
We.
alone.
You never know. But we. I'm gonna have you back on, and like whenever you have an idea or a topic that you want to talk about, I just wanted to bring you on to introduce you to the audience, so that they know who you are, when you start coming on and talking astrology, to hear about your story and the richness and depth of your story. And we want to hear more about your story as well. At least I do, as we continue talking, and talking about where the planets are, what that means for where we are right now, the world, how to work with the energy. I think we'll have some really fun conversations about astrology moving forward, as
Yes.
we reconnect on this platform. So thank you again, Ricci, for being here. Just one more time, like, tell everyone where they can find you, how they
Okay.
can
So
connect.
right now, I'm on Instagram, and it's MIZRICCICAROLEKING, Ms. Ricci Carol King,
Awesome.
on Instagram.
Awesome.
And I will answer DMs,
Mhm.
and I do a lot of, my bookings and stuff through there. And once we connect, I will share my phone number and things like that. And but I do everything on Zoom. If you're in
Mhm.
Seattle, we can meet in person in my home.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have just created a bunch of offerings. I'm going to be teaching some classes in
Amazing.
2025. I'm really
Awesome.
excited to start doing
Yes.
some
And then you're going to
classes
be opening up your backyard to
in my backyard. And I
yes.
would love to have you come, Scott, and
Yeah,
we can do something.
for
Yeah,
sure. I'd love to.
finishing up structures and stuff out there. But spring
Exciting.
and summer in Seattle is gorgeous, and I'm just really excited about all of it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm going to plan to go up there again next summer because I got
Wonderful.
family in Central Washington. So,
Yeah.
maybe we'll do something then, or either way, hope to
Yeah.
connect with you. Uh,
Yeah.
Always, Ricci. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome, Ricci. Well, thank you
Bye.
again for being a guest here on the Weekly Transit. Looking forward to seeing you again soon on this platform and talking with you further.
Thank you. It was an honor, Scott.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. If you're interested in being a guest on the Weekly Transit, you can email me at scott@theweeklytransit.com. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.